Hey, YouTube.com and everywhere else, Facebook video. I'm Jason Ward, and you're watching the Making Star Wars show. I'm experimenting with green screens today. Didn't really plan on doing a show today, but I liked this bit of news that came out that I thought was pretty interesting. And it's that Phoebe Waller-Bridge is playing Marcus Brody's daughter in Indiana Jones 5. So for the last like week or so, we've seen pictures of her looking like a kind of like a little bit. I don't know if a beatnik is the way, but just sort of like a 1969 kind of hippie bohemian, maybe. Not exactly sure how you would describe her, but definitely looks like someone in that vein. And we were trying to figure out, is she a bad person? Is she a good person? Is she on Indy's team? Where does she fall into the show? And so today, this comes from John Campia, or Giovanni Campia, says Indiana Jones 5 update. Phoebe Waller-Bridge is playing Marcus Brody's daughter, and I love it. And I agree. I would assume if Giovanni Campia is saying this, it is completely on. I think he's a pretty trusted source in the film industry. So I believe it. And sounds rad. I liked like the callbacks in the last Indiana Jones film to Marcus because unfortunately, Denholm Elliott, I think was his name, he unfortunately died of AIDS. He was a victim of the AIDS crisis, and early on, and so didn't live to see the fourth Indiana Jones movie, unfortunately. And they did some stuff in the movie to remember him. Like there's a statue of him. But then there's like the gag where the car hits the statue and his head literally lands, on the dash. And it's like, it's kind of funny, but it's also like, it was kind of weird. I don't know. It never really sat well with me, that moment. It always felt just kind of off. It's funny, but it's also, but maybe I'm taking it too seriously because of real life context coming in. So, but anyways, there was other signs that Mutt Williams was back, and it looked like Boyd was playing Mutt, but we think that mostly because of the age and he's riding a motorcycle. So you would almost want to think that Mutt Williams and Marcus's daughter probably know each other because of Indiana Jones and because of Marion, and also because of the character from what's his name from part 4, who goes a little bit crazy. That dude. They all seem to they were probably all sort of in those same academic circles and stuff like that. So there's a chance that they come up together. We were speculating on the show, like, what if she's a competing reporter? Or somebody said that there's a picture of her with a camera in her hands. So if that's right, and then we know, and if that is Mutt, who we haven't, and the character, we haven't seen him, who was riding the motorcycle, we haven't seen him with the camera in his hands yet, I don't think. But maybe together they are working on something, and maybe that's what brings Indy in. Like, that's kind of my speculation at the moment about how this can go. But all in all, it's pretty cool news. And yeah, hey, how's it going, Logan? What do you think about this? You pretty jazzed about it? Because I'm really happy that we didn't get one film removed from Marcus and he's forgotten. At the same time, I don't want a movie that's entirely like looking back. Remember Marcus? Like, nobody wants that in your adventure Indiana Jones film. But having it in that way, where his daughter is involved, kind of a funny way of continuing it on. Now, the question that comes to mind for me is, if she's Marcus's daughter, does that make her the new Marcus? Does that make her, for instance, is she sort of a new, I mean, there's a lot of ways you could take the character, right? Marcus, in one version of it, is sending, he works in the on at the school, and he sends Indy out to get things for the museum. or maybe he works for the museum. I'm not even sure where Marcus actually works because he's at the college. But anyways, and then in the first film in Raiders of the Lost Ark, Marcus is like super like, you've never gone after anything like this before, and this is no joke. And Indy pulls out the gun and he's like, I'm careful, whatever. And it's like, that dude is like serious business, and he's like a true academic in the film. Like, he knows his stuff. Like when they're having the meeting with Porkins about who's like the top man, uh they're really digging into the whole thing about the arc and tennis and all that, and like he knows all the stuff. But then when you get to Last Crusade, he becomes almost a sitcom. Both Sala and Marcus become like sitcom characters. They're kind of a joke. He's the comic relief. He got lost in his own museum once, and he bumbles around and accidentally is sort of a Jar Jar Binks, but spread between him and Sala. Which, in a way, I love Last Crusade and I like that movie. But when you look at the saga, if you will, I don't know if that's the right way to put that series, but when you put it next to one another, it is like, what is this? So she's really beautiful. She could play any role she wants in the whole world. She could be super serious, but she's also hilarious. If you've never seen Fleabag, I definitely suggest, if you have nothing to do this weekend, I suggest you just sit down and watch Fleabag. Um, Super hilarious, and a solid performer and writer. And you know her from Solo, but she was playing a robot and you couldn't really see her. And it's like a good performance, but it's also not a noteworthy performance from her for that reason, I think. Um, but I think she could really play uh, into kind of a lot of different angles based off of the lineage. If they're playing a lineage game, they don't have to. She could be Marcus's daughter and be a Nazi sympathizer if they want to. They're not going to do that, but that's my point, is that it could really go any way. She could be anything still. But we've seen her at the parade. We've seen her, I believe, with the camera. She looks like fashionable, but she looks like a little bit kind of like a beatnik in a way. She looks like she could be next to Boyd's Mutt Williams, if he is, or Mutt, Jones, if that's who he's playing. So what qualities will they pull out from her? And I mean, I hope it's not like, if Marcus is the polar extremes of her character, I hope it's in the middle. I hope it plays on the seriousness of Marcus Brody, but then also plays on also a bit of the comedy, because it would be kind of a waste to have her in the show and then not have her be funny in any way. And but that's the thing with Indy, is it's like usually so gag based. I think if they play her serious, she could play into the comedic stuff just fine and land it every time. So um really, I haven't really talked about her too much since Solo, because why would I, like, in terms of the Lucasfilm stuff. But I think she's really rad. I think she's a really solid actor, and like the stuff that she's done has been really, really well done. So I think we're really lucky to have her. I mean, when you get down to it, if played right, like, this could be the next Marion, because what we have is, I think, if they are setting Boyd Holbrook up to be Mutt, Indiana Jones's son, 11 years later, or 50, it was 57 and this is 69. So, 12 years later ish, 13 years ish. And so we have a mature Mutt who's probably a photojournalist. That's always been my assumption he would become, based off of the fact that he gets the camera at the end of the last one. And then we've seen her with the camera. So maybe they work together. Maybe they're on the same kind of story, and then that's what brings Indy in. That's just a sort of a lazy assumption on my part, but I think it could really be the case. What does Logan say? I think they should have stopped after the fourth one. I'm so nervous about Indy 5 because of his age and his health. I don't know how this one will be. Well, I will say, it's like there's two perspectives that you could take on any of this stuff, right? One is leave well enough alone. Just move on, go do new stuff, you know? Back in the day, the Treasure of Sierra Madre, that was good enough. We didn't need, three more after it. It did the job for that generation. Leave it alone. I can respect that, I really can. I think that a lot of times most films don't need to be franchises and or a saga or a series or whatever. Now with Indiana Jones, I think they're all good. Just being, upfront. I'm excited enough about it that I'm jumping on Saturday, making a green screen with Indiana Jones in the background. So it tells you who I am on that front. That said, I don't ever want the stuff not to be taken seriously. I think that Last Crusade is my favorite one, probably. Not the best one. I mean, if we were gonna go like all academic about it and start like just like laying in really hard on what's better, Last Crusade or Raiders of the Lost Ark. Raiders of the Lost Ark has just so many better qualities. But Last Crusade's my favorite one. That's the one where if I have a cold and I'm staying home, that's the one I put on. You know what I mean? It's just a chill, fun adventure movie that I enjoy and it makes me laugh. So I just like it for what it is. And this next movie could be that. Like this next movie, I mean, Indiana Jones might be a Star Trek. Don't they say? Isn't there like a joke that every other Star Trek movie is good or something like that? I don't know. But if that's what they say, Indiana Jones might be that way too. And while I love Temple of Doom, Temple of Doom is probably like maybe my least favorite one. On the fourth one, on Crystal Skull, the first hour I think is better than Temple of Doom. The second hour, I think the movie just like loses form. The structure falls apart, loses focus. And so that's what kind of makes it my least favorite one, but I still love it for what it is. So my take is if the movie sucks, so what? So what? I mean, it just literally doesn't matter. It's not real. So if it sucks, then, you watch the ones that you like. And if they make 8 more of these, which they won't, not with Harrison anyway, but if they do, then, take what you like, throw away what you don't like. I mean, that's how I roll with it. Now, as far as Harrison's age, I have to say, I mean, yeah, he's getting up there. I think he looks pretty good. I really do. I think even though the dude's 80, he is so handsome and attractive and good looking that he looks like he's in his 60s for most people, sometimes anyways. And I think that it's going to be still going to be a good indie film. If you love Temple of Doom, he hurt his back super bad during that one, had to have experimental surgery. When you watch the film, watch for how many of the shots you can't see his face. It's a lot. He's if he's speaking or it's a close up, it's him. All most of the other stuff is stunt doubles and creative shooting to make it work because he was injured. So his injury, is it a product of his age or is it just life? Is it just a random occurrence? That's the thing that I don't know. I will say if he gets injured again, then I think we definitely have something there is a point to be made about putting a 79-year-old dude in the hat and the whip and the jacket and putting him out there for sure. But just getting injured, I mean, he got injured on Star Wars too. No one was saying it was because of his age, because a door fell on him. But on this one, it was rehearsing a fight sequence, but the indie fight sequences are no joke. I I honestly think you or I could get hurt probably rehearsing a fight sequence for those films too. So I'm not being so hard on it. But and then he goes on to say, I'm not so sure why they're doing a fifth one. I'm nervous for how Harrison Ford is in his age that is just crazy that they are doing a fifth one. I mean, we'll see. Like, Boyd Holbrook's character, who may be Mutt, if he is Mutt, is probably going to do a lot of the sidekick heavy lifting. Like if you notice, like in the fourth one, the scenes were derided publicly or very disliked, like the monkey sequence. But when you get down to it, like the sword fight sequence wasn't bad. It was pretty cool, and people should have really been focused on that, but they hit that uncanny valley, this fake green screen behind me element, and they're like, no, it's not real. I don't want this. And it was an easy target at the same time. But that's what everyone focused on. And that was a mistake by Lucas and Spielberg. I think it was overblown, but I think it was a mistake by Spielberg and Lucas to not catch it and to not have read The Room on that one, probably. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Marcus's daughter. So Dale says, get them while they're still alive or miss that opportunity. Yeah, no, that's kind of how I feel too. It's like, I love the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And what's the second one? Is it Shock Treatment? I will watch it as a 80s piece of trash. And it's really not as bad as people say, but it's really not worth remembering for the most part, I think, usually. And it's like, Rocky Horror's fantastic. Shock Treatment doesn't take that away, doesn't take anything away from that film for me. So that's where I'm just like, yeah, make more. And if Harrison wants to, it's his life. If he's willing to potentially sustain a injury that lasts him the rest of his life to do another Indiana Jones movie because he thinks he's up for it, cool. If his doctors agree he's up for it, I say cool. I mean, that's where I fall on it. I mean, he's a big boy, he knows what he's doing. And he's more likely to crash an airplane and die from that anyways, probably. Hopefully he doesn't, because I love that guy. I don't expect him to die soon, but we didn't expect Carrie Fisher to die either. Yeah, and I think that is, I point taken. I mean, life, man. Who knows, right? I mean, I might go to check the mail today and get run over by a car. You just never know what's going to happen. And Carrie, unfortunately, like the Carrie Fisher situation, which probably isn't going to be a popular take by me to say, but when older people stay on the party train, it just doesn't end well. And but I still think that's so different than Harrison making movies. And he has stuntmen, they're doing all kinds of digital replacements with his face, like, and even now that he's been injured, like the whole parade sequence, we could see a stunt double has those digital tracking marks that Harrison has to be younger in the 1940s stuff. And so yeah, I don't know, I don't feel like it's super irresponsible at this point. You know what I mean? Like, if he was like 90 years old and had like dementia going on and stuff like that, I'd be like, what are they doing here? If it was like an Anna Nicole Smith situation where, Lucasfilm is Howard K. Stern, and it's like, you guys are killing this person on camera right now. What? I don't think we're there. And when we look at Boyd Holbrook and Phoebe Waller-Bridge, it's like, we have two young people that are a part of the cast. I think they're going to do a lot of the lifting. And like, Toby Jones is in the early stuff for sure. We don't know if Toby Jones comes back into the later part, into the 60s, into the space race era part of the film. We don't know. I'm going to kind of think that if he doesn't die and he's not a bad guy or something, he probably will. I wouldn't be surprised if he was a German scientist that Indy was breaking out of there to bring here to work on the project that leads to the moon landing. I kind of think that's where they're taking this, probably. That's my assumption. But oh yeah, and before I forget, like, good work by John Campia, or Giovanni Campia, on getting that, because that's a rad story, and it made my day. Josh says that Last Crusade is also my favorite Indy movie. So much fun, and Sean Connery. Yeah, it's it's so weird, man. Like, they never would have made that movie today, like, that way. Like, Indy hooking up with his dad's last. I was the last man. Like, what? Like, that's weird. And okay, but it's hilarious. And I love everything about that dynamic, and bringing in Sean Connery, I think, is what infused that movie with a new life. I think it really brought the franchise up in that film, and I think it gave Indy a new dynamic. If there was one thing I would say about Last Crystal Skull was the dynamic for Indy, like what? I'm a dad and we're in quicksand. That stuff didn't play that well, and that's about the point of the film where it starts to lose me. Not even Mutt being the son, not him having a son, not Shia LaBeouf or anything that he did in that movie. In fact, I think he did a good job in the movie. I think he delivered his lines well, and they all landed, and they were funny. And it's nothing. The hate for Shia has nothing to do with the film. It has everything to do with Lucas's visual effect or Spielberg's choice. He was the director. It goes on him at the end. The choice for the monkey sequence, the monkey show. That's what does it, and it's really weird. I mean, and that's what's like kind of both sad and interesting about like movies today is one dumb thing can ruin a movie for an entire generation. It's like in Star Wars when Chewbacca growls out the mouse droid. That wasn't originally, that was added in the 82 re-release. And I feel like that kind of stuff, it's like that the tolerance level for it went way down as the initial generation grew up and took the previous work too seriously. The moment with the monkeys doesn't actually offend me. The execution of the visual effect could be a lot better though. And I'm also a little surprised that, because I think that's the problem with it. And I'm kind of surprised that that hasn't had a Greedo redo or two by now. You know what I mean? So Randy, hey Randy, how's it going, dude? Is Sala going to be in this film? I don't know. I don't know. So far there's no indication that he is. I'm not sure I don't know how the actor feels about Indy today. I've never really heard him talk about it, too much anyways. So I'm not sure. If he is in it, I hope there's a reason for it. I mean, I want to see him, but I'm also not a fan of like class reunion kind of movies where like, oh, here, like that's the one thing I give a lot of respect to the Force Awakens. Like Luke showing up at the end was, I think, a very wise move, and I think it kept it from feeling too cheap, because it does feel cheap when like, oh, remember me, just constantly happening on camera. Like, I really do get tired of it. Like it's fun for a day, but it's like, every time there's like a reunion, like a sitcom reunion or something like that, people watch it and they love it, but how many people love it after they've seen it, after like that newness of look at them now wears off? It's not that good usually. It's usually a bad idea. It's usually better to leave them in our memories. But I love Indiana Jones so much that I don't want that. And I do think that Mutt as a character has so much potential that I want to see what they wanted to do with him. They wanted to do more films with Mutt. That was the idea, was to give Indy a son and then take it from there and make it a spin-off series. So I have a feeling that is the plan. I think Boyd Holbrook is really quite talented and could be a great action movie like star, especially like in this kind of thing. Whether if he was just playing that dude in Uncharted, it would have been good, I think, for what it was. And so, and then Phoebe Waller-Bridge playing Marcus's daughter, like, I'm liking everything I'm hearing about the movie. They're doing a 1940s Indy versus the Nazis segment, probably the first 20 minutes. And then we're getting into a whole new era of American history that we haven't heard much about Indy in or anything. And it's like the space race stuff. And you're like, well, what is that going to mean? What's going to happen there? What are they after? How does the space race tie in? And yeah, I think it's pretty neat. So far, I'm feeling like I want to see what this is, and it feels like it has such a different round of flavor to it. That's my thing too. Is I don't like when films like in a series start to feel the same. And I'm a Star Wars fan, so that's probably sounds super stupid to somebody who's not one. But I like them to have their unique vibe and a color palette and themes, music themes, story themes that just change it up. And so if it's a bit of the same and a bit of new, you mix that together, I'm happy for the most part. So we'll have to see what they do with it, though. I mean, and it's not Spielberg, and that's like the other thing is, can Indiana Jones live on beyond Spielberg? I love George Lucas. Like, I love George Lucas more than anybody I have talked about today. But at the same time, his influence on Indiana Jones beyond the creator of, wouldn't it be a great idea to make a movie like that, isn't so as important as Lucas fans want it to be. That's just the truth. His assistant did most of the research for the MacGuffins for him. And then he looked at the little laundry list and picked. I mean, that sounds good. It's like it's an executive, as an executive producer, it's rocking it. Totally, I'm not trying to belittle that, and I'm not trying to belittle his creation of the character, but I am saying that with his input into the sequels, especially, you didn't really. I don't know if we needed a George Lucas, and in fact, if there hadn't been one, we may have got more sequels quicker. He was the one who was like, "Oh, I want it to be the Crystal Skull," and was like really sticking on the Saucermen from Mars stuff and everything, and eh, you know, it really made it not happen for years. So I'm gonna miss George Lucas. I would rather he have been involved if it was possible, if he had something to say or an idea, but I don't think he was as important as we would think or as needed after the establishment of the work that he did do. I think that's the best way to put it. And then we have Spielberg. And I feel like Spielberg he's not been super fresh recently, And I feel like if he had done this indie movie, I think it would have felt tired. I don't think he has the same exuberance for that stuff as he once did. And I think that's probably the biggest problem with the fourth film. And I think it becomes more apparent in the second act, or maybe it becomes more apparent in the second act because they started using green screen and more modern filmmaking things, and it just wasn't there for him. I don't know. That said, new directors, always good to see what they can do with it. And right now, my dream is that if this movie connects, it's super good. It's a great last film for Harrison Ford to do a Lucasfilm production, or a Star Wars, or Lucasfilm role, and play Indy. And he's done playing Han Solo now for sure. So it's a good send off. And then if it leaves Mutt with a future and a place to take that kind of kinetic action and that universe and play with it more, and the director does the next one too, that's my dream for it. So yeah. Josh says it would be a little weird to have Toby play a Nazi scientist because that is almost the exact character he played in the first Captain America movie. It's called typecasting, but he's definitely probably a scientist. I guess I shouldn't say probably a scientist, but he's definitely a nerd. And he's in Nazi Germany. And he's outside of a castle with Indiana Jones. So it's like, what does it amount to, I mean, you're right though. He would have played that role before. Played the role well. So if it is that, we know it's going to work, but Toby Jones is a great actor. He could be an American, I don't know what an American would be doing in Nazi Germany at that time who looks like Marcus Brody, So it's kind of hard to imagine he's not that. But time will tell pretty soon, and it'll be fun to figure it out, right? Oh man, if it's Brian says, "Oh man, if it's about the space race, I'm spelling an anti-Soviet propo." Yeah, probably. I'm gonna take it up one step and say it's just straight up anti-Russian propaganda today if it does go that way. Which the fourth one, I think the fourth film was pretending that the Cold War ended. And I will say at the time, ironically, I was doing some outside coursework in college, and I ended up taking Cold War studies courses, a couple of them for my outside work. And basically at that time, the whole most papers were like, the Cold War never ended. The Cold War ended when the Soviet Union fell. It was like one or the two, constantly back and forth, one or the other. And when you look at kind of where we ended up in the last couple of years with, not that we don't do it too, but I'm not a what about person, even though I kind of just did it. But it's like, there are reasons right now for there to be anti-Russian propaganda thrown around. I mean, considering what we have with all the Russian bot nonsense and stuff like that. So it wouldn't surprise me if we end up looking back at this film as an extension of that, kind of like what Rocky 4 was, and Rocky and a Rambo 3 were to the Cold War at that time. Randy says that space race topic for Indys scares me. I'd rather another artifact based film. Yeah, so I think that that's where this is a good place to take the discussion. I still think it's going to be an artifact based film. I think that ultimately the movies are about Indy and Jones going after something, obtaining it, realizing that the supernatural power, isn't something mankind or humankind should have, and it's greater than all of us. And then, as the hero, closes his eyes and doesn't look at it, puts the stones back, leaves the cup behind the sill, doesn't run with it, lets the crystal skull take that person's brain, and once again leaves it behind, and it goes away, and he's, the one of honor. So I would not expect that to change in this film. That would be a very weird thing to do. Make, 5 movies and then all of a sudden we're going to do that. So what I think is that something's going on with the space race, and maybe we haven't seen any Russian evidence in the film yet that there's any Russian anything or KGB agents or anything yet. So we don't even know that. We're guessing. But I'm going to guess that there's a supernatural artifact that is going to be key to space exploration, and something that both sides are going to want. And probably in the end, Indy is going to once again forego it, and they will have a story if they are in the media, as I am assuming. If Mutt Williams is the son who's returning and is a photojournalist, and if Phoebe Waller-Bridge is playing Marcus Brody's daughter and is also a journalist or related to the museum now as a curator or something, you end up, I think, with that artifact, and they're the ones who have to get it to stop some nefarious force, probably the Russians. Maybe they even, because Mads Mikkelsen's character, who we assume is a German Nazi, most likely, and is probably the bad guy. Maybe there's something that he takes, like during the first film. Maybe he gets away and they lose the artifact in 1940, whatever, and maybe he does escape down to South America, where many Nazis did, and maybe he's working on it there, or he's now defected to the Soviets, and they have to get it before the Soviets do. I mean, that's a very obvious structure, I think, but if you're going to play Occam's razor, maybe it's right. So we'll have to look back at this video once we learn more, or once we see the film especially, and see how close were we. Right. Luke coming back in the sequel trilogy is why most people are upset. It'll all work out in the wash eventually. Yeah. I mean, it's once people's expectations become realistic, or they expect the movie to do what the movie does. That's always something. Like, there's always a little bit of petulance, like when you're a huge fan and the movie's not what you want, like there's like, but it could have been this and I want it to be that. And like, and you don't let that go, and then over time you just kind of forget about that and you accept what it is, and then you either forget it or you just accept it and it becomes what it is. Star Wars prequels, I'm looking at you. So is Shia playing Mutt? Asked Stephen Hinman. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, it's an assumption, but his age range adds up. He does look like he could be Harrison Ford's son, but he also does look like he could be an adult version of the teenage Shia LaBeouf character. And he rides the motorcycle. Now, some people, think like that's not good enough. And I'm with you. Like, I'm not, confirmed. No, definitely not confirmed. I don't think so. But it is such a weird choice. If they have him riding like the motorcycle and being the motorcycle sidekick, because then you're just like, why didn't you just make it Mutt? It becomes like a disowning of the last film, and that's weird. And as we can see, the movie's not forgetting the past. I mean, what can't be a scoop here, we got Marcus Brody coming back. Marcus Brody wasn't in the last film, so if they were going to forget him ever, now would have been the time. Logan says, I hope this movie has good fight sequences. Yeah, that's what I expect. I mean, really, at the end of the day, it's like the Indiana Jones formula is that he's in a fight, he's in over his head. He's a bit acrobatic, but it shouldn't be unrealistic, not to a crazy degree anyway. Like hanging on the bottom of a truck while it drives is really unrealistic, like when you get down to it. But it's also like it's a fantasy that you can have. If you were just driving next to a truck, you could have the fantasy of you're hanging on the bottom of it while it drives. Like that's something that people think about when they see things, and their mind does the math on it and goes, that's a bad idea. But you still have that fantasy. And it's like, you could also change that around and say, like, did anyone ever have the fantasy that they swing on a rope? Yes. Is swinging on a rope a very adventure serial motif that happens in action all the time? Yes. Does it happen with digital monkeys? That's where they lost people. But once again, I keep harping on that today, but it doesn't bother me. Like I literally don't hate the scene. Also, don't hate the fridge scene. I feel like it was as unrealistic as Indy using a life raft to parachute out of a plane with a lady and a kid into a river. So it's like, but those things definitely do push the boundaries of Indiana Jones and maybe even good taste at times for action. I think that if somebody feels that way, I think that you would be minimizing them to say they're wrong, because it's completely fair to say that. But at the same time, I don't don't think Mangold is gonna direct that movie. It doesn't seem to be that dude to me. And yeah, I don't think he's gonna all of a sudden start nuking the fridge, putting in D and RAS. Like I think if anything, the question becomes: is he gonna make the fight scenes too gritty? And if he does it feel right for Indiana Jones? Because it doesn't necessarily have to. It doesn't mean it's the right choice. That's my take anyway. Dale says, "Wait, read the second part. Left aloud. Wait, did I skip? Oh, sorry, dude. I'm trying a new setup right now, and I have like the chat down here. I was just thinking right now, I want like the chat up here, just below the camera, so I could like look at you guys and read at the same time. Anyways, I think I think like shows like Mando, Book of Boba Fett, and the others though, through the era between Return of the Jedi and the TFA, are going to spell it out for people. Yeah, yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, I really don't have anything to add to that other than the fact that it does. I mean, it's like what's weird to me is like how creative fans can be when they're trying to like when it's a lie or when they're making up something or whatever. But it's weird to me how when they are shown something that they don't like, how their brains don't help themselves make it work oftentimes. Because like most of the stuff people have problems with, you could really make work by just going, here, what's the justification that works for me? Okay, I'll go with it. I'll roll with it because it doesn't really matter, and I would rather enjoy myself. But that's how I kind of fall on these films in general. Like I would rather enjoy myself. Like um, I saw the Mummy films. I'm not hating on them. Like the Romancing the Stone films for what they are. Not hating on them either, but they do not come even in the vicinity of an Indiana Jones film. Yeah, they have certain little things that are overlap, and but it's a so what. It's just not close, you know? It's not close. So I would rather have more Indiana Jones movies than just more adventure movies. And I like them for what they are, you know? I really do, but yeah, you really can't top Harrison Ford, you know? And then Randy says, "Do you think Antonio Banderas was a good hire?" Yeah, I do think so. I do. I think I'm usually really pretty much anti movie star in my stuff that I know already, you know. But I also don't think that the Antonio Banderas of 15 years ago, and I think that he's gonna add us. He does is a solid action star. He does action really well, and I think he's going to fit into that universe. I also think he has the charisma to contend with Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones. If his character's written well at all, he's going to rock it. I think so. I think he's going to be really good. And yeah, it's surprising though. I'm surprised that the hire went through or was announced anyways or was finalized so late. Um, but I also think that he's going to probably be more of an ally to Indy. And with what we were hearing about casting and where I think he is in the film, like I talked about some kids who are supposedly being cast in roles, I assumed that that character might be a bit seedier, but it's hard to say. But also his casting makes me wonder if Sala is going to come in because we're getting kind of a full movie here right now. If if Phoebe Waller-Bridge is in the most of the film, once we get to her era, and if Boyd Holbrook is in most of the film for most of the era, and then we have Antonio Banderas coming into the film, stops kind of leading a lot of room. I think that's so, and I think that it probably puts Mads Mikkelsen even more into the villain category, most likely. Eric says the artifact has to be Diglok based on Operation Paperclip. Also, I wouldn't be surprised if Mads Mikkelsen is playing Dr. Hans Kammler of the SS, Diglok's rumored designer. Yeah, and there's like rumors about that going around, like it, and you know what I mean. And there's stuff that um, I don't know if that stuff is real. It could be. I mean, it could be interesting, you know. And I hope if time travel comes in, I hope it's like at the very end of the movie, it starts working and we start to see you know, something from another era or whatever you know what I mean? Like it's like time is encroaching and changing right then. And then they stop it and then they, save the day and they get it from whoever the bad guys are because one of the rumors was that Mads Mikkelsen was a scientist making the Diglok machine, and I'm not sure if that's how I say it Diglok, but I'm probably saying that wrong, so I'm not sure how you really are supposed to say that, but yeah, so the odds are is that it's been something that he was working on during the 40s, which is why we go there, and then it's closer to actualization by 1969. So but I'm with you, Eric. I think it really well could be, and I hopefully pretty soon they give us the title and they give us what the premise of the film is. Kratos says, "Who are the villains? I mean, we saw a Nazi train and a castle, but these are very likely to be flashbacks. But who are Mikkelsen and Boyd Holbrook? Yeah, so the Nazi train, obviously from the 40s. Um, so the flashbacks and when I think when we say flashbacks, we almost need to like clarify that the film likely, if it follows previous films, won't start in 1969 and then be like, remember when? It won't do that. It'll be just like the other ones where it starts in 1944. Indy's on the adventure. It ends. The adventure probably fails. He usually fails his opening missions, except for in Last Crusade. There's almost like a little addendum where he does win, but in the other ones he fails the opening mission, and then we get to the present time where the consequences of those things play into the current adventure. So I think that's where it'll go, and I think Mad. Like I said, I think Mads is the villain, and I think Boyd Holbrook is a very good candidate for Mutt Williams. I had heard that he was Mutt Williams, um, but it wasn't confirmed, and it was like a kind of a hey, pretty sure this is who he's playing. I'm like, should I run with this? And I was told, don't run with it yet. I'm not so, I was like, okay, fine. And then I literally talked about it on the show. And then the very next day, Boyd is on the motorcycle. And I'm like, well, it's looking like he's Mutt Williams. So Mark Hamilton says, fill in all that time with loads of space. Jesus, Luke, before he goes hermit, kill Mara to break him completely and be on the edge of falling to the dark side because he switches off. Yeah, there's a good 30 years worth of Luke Skywalker stories to tell before the sequel trilogy. I think they should do it. I think they should just get on it. I think they should stop trying to make other characters a new Luke Skywalker. No one's going to replace him. No one's going to be a new Luke for us. I mean, that's what sucks, and it's the problem. Like, there's characters that there's nothing wrong with them. The only problem is like what Indy says to Marion. They weren't you, sweetheart. I'm a sweetheart, Mark Hamill. Love you. But anyways, Dale says Mark gets it. Anyway, I need to get ready for work. Catch y'all on the replay on the next one. See you later, Dale. Have a good day at work, dude. Logan says, what are your favorite animals from the Indiana Jones movies, and why is it your favorite? What do you like about it? My favorite animal. Man, what animals have been in the Indy films? I mean, we got like the snakes and then like all the bugs and stuff. I mean, this isn't a great answer, but I do like when the elephant is messing with Willie. That's probably my favorite animal moment. But if you want to just go like, what's the best? I think it's when he gets into Jock's. His name Jock. I think it's Jock. The guy in the opening of Raiders, and he has the snake and his pet snake Reggie. I think that's probably it though. Kratos says, should we expect other actors from the previous movies like Sala, Willie, Shorty, or will they focus on a totally new cast of side characters who travels with Indy? Yeah, I mean that's a pretty good question. I kind of don't expect that we're gonna see Willie and Short Round, and it's like kind of strange because their like disappearance from the story is sort of weird too, because Short Round is with Indy before Raiders. Like Temple of Doom takes place first, and he's never mentioned again. I'm curious if there is any kind of fear over Short Round, like of his depiction. Is his depiction appropriate? Is it inappropriate? Because there's definitely like elements that I could see like not really flying today about Short Round. Maybe. It's hard to say. It's like, and then they had the opportunity to put them into the wedding sequence in the last one. They didn't do it. There was a rumor that was happening, but it didn't happen. And I don't know if Kate Capshaw really even like cares to act anymore, and Spielberg's not directing it, so I think it makes it even kind of less likely. But I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't mind though. I mean, and in the end, I mean, if Boyd is playing Mutt and Phoebe Waller-Bridge continues in the stories and they spin it off, would be kind of cool to see Mutt and an adult Short Round, kind of become pals too. Because that's kind of an interesting thing to how they can play Mutt. Like, does Mutt blame Indy at all for like not being there? Is there any weirdness after the fourth film? If Mutt was to meet Short Round, what would he think about this kid who went on adventures with his father for maybe a year or maybe years? Who knows? We don't really know. But that was like adventuring with his father while his father wasn't with him. You know, I mean, well, kind of, I guess that probably happens before. Yeah, the Short Round adventures would happen before, but it still stands though. And we don't know how their relationship ended or when he kind of fades away in Indy's life, if he does, or to what extent. So yeah, it's kind of fascinating. You know, there's a lot that could be done with spinning this off if that's where it's going. Wouldn't it be? Randy says, wouldn't it be ironic if Mutt and Brody's daughter got married? Yeah, that's what I would almost imagine that's where they're going to put the love story. Because you fall into the place where if Marion's in the opening of the film or in the film at all, and if she's alive or if she's dead, if she's alive and it didn't work again, that's kind of funny, but also not very satisfying for the fourth film and what they did with it. Kind of takes away from it. So if they're still married, you have that. Indy can't be, going in for the kiss. None of that adventure stuff, but Mutt can, or Boyd Holbrook can. And so you have that. And then if Marion has died by this point, sure, Indy could, but it still will ring weird to the audience, I think. Probably. At the same time, this is the guy who hooked up with the lady after his dad did. So who knows what the logic of the film is going to be. But in the Lucas era, would have been a bit more surprising. Well, whereas in the Disney era, I don't think they would do it. But that's just me. But at the same time, Mangold, whatever his idea is, probably what's going to win out. Greta says, thank you for the answers. Another question. If this will be Indy's last adventure, could he face once and for all in fear? His fear of snakes? Yeah. Well, I guess there's like a couple. There's like, will he take on the snakes? Do we want that? Like, do we want him to get over his fear of snakes? And will Mutt's fear be scorpions? I like that part when the scorpion is I'll quit dancing. It's great. So like, there's like a lot to like in that movie. People are too hard on it. But all right. Well, once again, good work by Campia on that scoop, because that's the best news I heard all day. It made my afternoon. And I am going to end this one here where it's at, because I am doing a UFO show tonight at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you guys want to come back and talk about UFOs, which is just a little random thing that we're doing right now, might spin that off into a new channel. Not sure. I'm going to see what my passion for talking about it is, but it's been fun with the recent stuff going on. And if you want to support the channel, you can become a Patreon supporter, or you could become a YouTube channel supporter. If you're a Patreon supporter, you get access to this as an audio file, a podcast. You basically get an RSS feed link, and you're able to put that into your podcatcher, and it's like you have a podcast, every day or every time I do a stream. So if you're interested in that, that's one way of supporting the channel and getting a podcast. So whatever works for you guys is cool with me. And if you can't support the channel, no problems. Just happy to have Star Wars buds, Indiana Jones buds in the chat talking with me every day and on a whim. And it's so surprising when it happens. And I want to thank everybody for that. And have a good rest of the weekend if I don't see you tonight. And I didn't start the show with the opening, but I'm going to end it with one. So thanks again, and good work, Campia.
It's not about spaceships. It's not about spaceships.